There we go. We're on. Okay.
Okay, I can see you on Unlonely.
Okay.
It says I have to log into chat. I don't know if that's going to actually work, but we'll see.
Do you, Pichi? You do you. So, like I said, I added YouTube support. We used to stream to YouTube, and for some reason, it just stopped working. So I stopped trying because at the end of the day, anyways, I'm really trying to focus more on like the Web3 native technology. And Unlonely, personally, for me works well. I know some folks have some critiques of it, and that's fair. But as far as like live video streaming, it's the best app in my opinion. Shout out to the Unlonely team, Grace, for sure. So if you're at any point throughout the stream having issues with the stream, just know Cryptosapiens on X, Cryptosapiens on YouTube, and Cryptosapiens on Unlonely. We're live everywhere. The chat, however, if you want to follow the chat, if you want us to respond to your questions, if you want us to bring up a topic to the stage, it's only happening on Unlonely. That's the only place I'm tracking it. So if you're listening to it to this stream anywhere else, unlonely.app/channels/Cryptosapiens. All right. Pichi, how are you doing this fine morning?
Much better now that I am in one place for a few days. I was doing a lot of traveling, and although I enjoy the end result, I really detest like airplanes and airports and the whole act of getting places. But once I'm there, I'm always happy. It's just, getting there that's the challenge. So it's nice to be stable, and it's nice to have a continuous cell phone coverage, which I did not have for a few days, and I did not realize how terminally online we really are until you put a bunch of crypto nerds together and then take away their service, and we all go a little crazy. So it was fun, but I'm glad to be connected again.
Yeah, it's like, let's host a tech gathering, but let's remove their tech capabilities. Yes. I mean, I guess it's refreshing, right? Like to disconnect. Though it sounds like it could also be stressful.
So it was really, really stressful because during base camp, they were doing a stream as well. So they were using up a big portion of the Wi-Fi to make sure that the stream was going. And it was pretty crazy because at some point, I think they said there were 60,000 people watching the stream across the world, which was really exciting to know that so many people are interested in what's happening with base. It was the 1-year anniversary. They were showcasing a lot of winners from the different various hackathons and projects. Like On-Chain Summer was in full swing. And then they made an announcement about base names where everyone could start claiming their base name or at least putting themselves on the wait list. So they put up the QR code, and everyone in the room, held up their phones and tried to get on the QR code, and we crashed the internet completely. And then we were all panicked and like freaking out, trying to like register our base names before they got sniped. And then the DMs started coming in of like, hey, can you grab my name for me? And then we realized if you were in the room, you were kind of allow listed to get your name, but you could only claim one. So it was really like just your name. You couldn't really help out your friends per se, but we were trying to share the link so that they could put themselves on the wait list, which was really cool. But then we all lost internet at the same exact time. And like watching 400 people start to all kind of panic, like, did yours work? Did yours work? And we're trying to do like wallet transactions as well as, filling something in on the website with unstable Wi-Fi. There was just kind of this collective like holding of the breath moment. And it was like, okay, calm down. It's not really, really live. This was the first announcement and you guys get dibs. So don't worry about doing it right this moment. But then you could tell for the next like 20 minutes, everyone was like, did yours work? Did yours work? So I felt bad for the folks that were doing that next presentation because we were all super distracted and we clearly needed like 6 more Starlink terminals to kind of take on those 500 people that are all super connected, trying to do wallet transactions in the middle of the woods. So it was quite hilarious and wonderful.
So wait, is that the way that Fest handles, or should I say maybe even that location in Idlewild handles internet, is Starlink?
So they have Wi-Fi, but we were definitely massacring it as a bunch of kind of nerdy people. And
kind of, I like that.
Yeah, kind of nerdy people. Like some people consider nerd an insult, but I'm using it like to mean you're just, you're tech savvy and kind of with the technology, right?
Heck
so you're
yeah.
a little ahead of the game. But the campus was definitely overwhelmed. And then we learned the hard way that a lot of websites were blocked because we think it might actually be like a high school thing, not a college thing like we thought, or it's just very aggressive blocking. So it blocked a ton of like Web3 domains and things like that. We couldn't get around it. So that was also really frustrating because a lot of people had their, projects or mints or things set up for activations, and then the Wi-Fi didn't work. So there were a few teams that had Starlink terminals, and they were trying to help out like the vendors so they could process crypto payments and things like that. So it was really fun to kind of watch people problem solve in real time. And there was a group called Bend, who used to be Beam, I believe, that was handling most of the payments. And they realized really quickly that the Wi-Fi wasn't stable enough, and where the food trucks and vendors were set up had the weakest signal. So they like met someone halfway down the mountain and brought a ton of Starlink terminals up. So that was something that I really respected. Like any startup that does that much hustle, and instead of just saying, well, it's not our problem, the backbone of the Wi-Fi isn't working, they were like, no, we asked everybody to use our payment system, so we're going to make the payment system work. And they went out there, got the terminal set up, and made it so that we could all, pretty flawlessly buy food and things like that. So I was actually really, really impressed with their ability to hustle and fix situations in real time. So it was fun to like watch us all kind of struggle and then figure things out together and figure out workarounds. So we were teaching people all the VPN tools they could use so that they weren't blocked by the college Wi-Fi. So it was fun to kind of get that next layer of nerdy together and be like, ooh, okay, if you're not on the iOS 18 beta and you don't have a built-in VPN, you can try these ones and download them and stuff like that. So it was fun to kind of problem solve and troubleshoot in real time and then spread those memes, because a lot of people, their Telegram was behind and things like that. And to say, hey guys, like here's the solution, here's the workaround, and kind of having those little moments and watching it proliferate, and people suddenly were able to, use their FAR cards and things like that to connect, whereas before it didn't work for them. So it was fun. It was a good challenge, and I really I like respect cell phone towers so much more. And like, I just haven't been that disconnected. I haven't been in a spot yet to test the iPhone satellite connection for emergency texting. And I got the little satellite notification for the first time that said like, hey, like you're actually completely disconnected. The only way you can get a message through is through the emergency services. So that was nice to know that feature works. And it was also nice to know that I normally don't need that in my everyday life. So very glad that, cell phone structure is so good today that we're usually connected. There's a difference between bad signal and no signal.
Right.
And I appreciate it so much more. So it was a good few days to be disconnected.
But it just goes to show, I think, just how like easy we have it, I guess. I can't think of the right word right now for some reason. Brain, not enough coffee. But like we're privileged, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, in terms of the technology that we have readily available to us, which then enables us to think about solving other problems, right? Because we don't have to worry about, and this is going to sound a little funny, but and I'll say why in a moment, but I think you'll get it. The infrastructure is already there, right?
Yes.
Like we have, telecom has been figured out, both at like broadband, right? So your cell phone towers, as you're talking about, but also at a micro scale, Wi-Fi and internet and VPNs and all of these things that allow you to get internet outside your home, but also internet inside your home. And regardless of where you're at, usually you have powerful signal. And so with that, you go, what can I build on top of that? Of course, I'm laughing because the meme for the last couple of years in crypto or in Web3 has been build a ton of infra without any real applications on top of it that are usable, right? Consumer experiences. So I wonder, maybe as a segue, are we there yet? Are we there yet where we have sufficient infrastructure that is reliable? Because even this service that you talked about where like your phone switched to emergency mode and then gave you a shitty but still usable satellite connection to connect for emergency services. Do we have that yet? Are we able to transition that seamlessly? I wonder. Do you have any thoughts on that? I know that's kind of just pulling off the thread that you started with there, but I'm curious what your thoughts are. Hot takes here.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually it was really funny because as we talk about this, I think I can pivot it back to Farcaster, right? Of like a lot of the rails they're building. And now that those rails are built, it's really starting to open up for more people to build on top and on top and on top. But then when you lose that infrastructure layer, like how you have to really go back and think about like, wow, okay, how does Wi-Fi work? Why is this website not loading? Oh, it's blocked by the campus. Like if you're on someone else's Wi-Fi, you're on someone else's platform, they can control your experience. And how do you get around that? And we're pretty lucky that we live in the US and most of our internet is not blocked. We do really have a lot of free and open access. But it was a good reminder that like not everybody does. And you have to have all these workarounds but you have to know how to do the workarounds, right? And like a lot of people don't use a VPN in their daily life. And you could kind of tell who was extra nerdy or who was maybe trading on dexes that are blocked in the US. Like you just saw like really quickly like who had a use case for using a VPN on the daily and who like never really came across that at all because their kind of version of the internet just works. So it was really fascinating to see that where it was like, oh, just turn on your VPN. And about half the people were like, I don't have that. And the other half of the people were like, oh, cool, click, one click and they were connected because this is part of their life. Or, they're just used to like sites not working or sites being blocked, or they're at work where the Wi-Fi is, blocked and they have bad signal. So it was kind of funny to watch us go from like, you're in LA and everything just works flawlessly. Your phone just does whatever you need it to do. And then you step out in the woods and now there's all these new challenges. And it just reminds you of like how far we have come. But the fact that if I actually had gotten lost in the woods, I could have pinged my GPS coordinates to where I was to emergency services. That's really kind of game changer. Because if you're an avid hiker, you don't have to worry about that. Just bring your cell phone, bring a solar powered battery backup charger, and you can go hike as long as you want, right? Just have a great time, not even think about it. Because if something terrible happens, who cares if your cell phone signal's gone? Boom, you'll connect to a satellite. Emergency services knows where you are. Like that's a huge unlock that wasn't even possible a year ago, right? So I feel like we're steadily having these cool incremental changes, but then at the same time, you see, like, if someone really wanted to destroy America, like, it's really easy. Just take away our internet, and we are suddenly like freaking out, don't know how to do anything. Because like, oh, there's a way to solve this, but I need Google or Reddit or something to figure it out. And when you can't connect to that, you had to, actually human and talk to people and say, hey, how'd you get around this? What are you using? How did that work? And then we were definitely sharing like where the strongest Wi-Fi signal was. So you could go to a certain building and like download whatever apps you needed. And it was pretty cool because Fest was using an app called Mesh. And some of that was doing some local bouncing. So Mesh seemed to work kind of no matter what, but the chat was sometimes a little bit delayed. But the actual connection of connecting to people did not seem to be signal dependent. And that was really neat because I feel like there's not a lot of apps that can do anything without connectivity. And it seemed like they had some built-in layers there to say, like, what if the signal's bad? But it's because Fest has been there for a while. So people who were avid Festers kind of knew that the internet situation was a little sketchy. I think it was those of us that it was our first time that we were all kind of caught off guard about how bad the signal could be and, how useless your phone would become. So it was great to, disconnect a little bit and chat with people. But it was also hard when you're trying to share, oh, I have a POAP, or here's my NFC card, or my icebreaker, or my FAR card, or, let's connect on Warpcast, and like, people don't have signal. So you learned really quickly a lot of these things don't work without the internet as a backbone. And then, you're resorting to taking photos of people's usernames and stuff so that you can add them later. So, we all figured it out, but it was kind of funny to watch us like struggle with it a little bit. And it's like, we're so close, but so far away. Because I think that was like probably the one place we could have gone that would have had that many technology changes. If we were just, like FarCon was at Venice Beach. If we were at Venice Beach, everything would have worked pretty seamlessly, right? Like we wouldn't have had these issues. So it was definitely fun to like challenge a bunch of nerdy people to like figure out how to use your technology when circumstances are not ideal. And we seem to all kind of get around it, but it would have been cooler to see more photos, more videos kind of done in real time. And instead it's a little bit of a dump later because people just didn't have the connection. And, to actually mint something to the blockchain takes a little bit of a stable internet connection, honestly. Like you can't really just disconnect in the middle of the process. Like you can reload a website, but if you're trying to mint to Moshi or, Rodeo or claim your base name using your wallet, like you actually do need a pretty stable internet connection for those few minutes. And I think that was a good lesson learned for all of us. Like if you're going to be minting in the real world in real time, which I think some of these platforms are driving us to do, right? Like don't just post it on Instagram, mint it. It's super low cost and your friends can collect it. And they can support you and, all these different wonderful creator things. We still need the internet to kind of work flawlessly for us. So I think we're super close, but, still maybe like another 10% to go. And it makes me really, happy that I live in a place that has, pretty decently fast internet in most places. But I realize that sometimes like when we're building, we're not really thinking about people that have not as strong signal and that maybe their cell phone connections can't download gigs and gigs of data. And what does that mean? And how can they participate in the creator economy? And it really made me kind of take a step back and say, okay, when we're building all these tools, there needs to almost be kind of like a light version or like what happens if you're not on, gigabit internet in New York City. Because if we are building tools and Farcaster is becoming more and more international, some, I think, builders need to start thinking about that. Like, don't have an app that's downloading, half a gig for every session. Like it's actually really important to maybe conserve data and to think about how to do things as light as possible or have a light mode. Like it's not as big of a deal for people in America, but it's a really big deal for people who are paying, by the meg and by the gig, which is the reality for a lot of folks, even with their home connections, right? They are metered. So it's something to think about in the future as creators. Like, of course, I want you to watch my videos, but I also don't really want the feed to autoplay if that steals all your precious data, So thinking about, autoplay is like fun for some things, but maybe it's not ideal for everybody. So it's just a good reminder to think about people that aren't in your exact situation and make sure that we're being a little more inclusive.
All great points. I think, in terms of accessibility and inclusivity, I think these are all very relevant and very important. I personally was planning, as you know, first of all, to go to Fest. Second of all, to host some activations at Fest. I had talked to a couple of projects that I'm fond of, similar to what I did at ECC with Check-In. I wanted to do something fun with the community there. And I was talking to the folks over at Moxie. And so I was planning on having a bit of a scavenger hunt at the event. So if you RSVP'd, we would be basically taking on the scavenger hunt, at the venue. And then we would be minting our memories on chain, which I was very excited to do. But unfortunately, because of, unforeseen family matters, I had to stay behind. And, I felt like I was missing out. Obviously, family first, taking care of, the things that I need to, that are important to me. Of course, but it was great to see some, I guess, of the conversations that were happening and some of the experiences that people were having. I now realize why people weren't sharing as much as I would have liked them to share. Because I remember I'm in a couple of group chats and I'm like, I'm living vicariously through you. Okay, so make sure that you post what's happening at Fest here so that I can, relieve some of that sadness that I won't be there. And I didn't really see many updates. So that makes sense. But hey, it sounds like overall a great event. Maybe the internet needs to be reconsidered, or at least the way that people experience the internet can be reconsidered at Fest 3 next year, which hopefully, if all goes well, I'll be there.
Yes, I'm hoping many, many more Farcasters will be in attendance next year. And we have a lot of kind of lessons learned from those of us that went for the first time. And think we could, really, really up our experience and, rent some Starlink terminals to make sure that we all are a bit more connected, because it would be more fun to be engaging with more people who aren't there in real time and things like that. But it was just, a bit of a technical challenge. So we learned a lot.
Yeah, actually, that would be an interesting way to sponsor the event where usually, you go to these major conferences, oh, bore, and you see all these sponsor booths, right? With all of this swag, most of it unusable, let's be honest. I only get the swag that I know I'm going to wear or that'll make a good pajama. Um, but this would be an interesting way for a project to say, I want to get involved, sponsor a Starlink hub or whatever they're called. And now you have much better internet. And, the accessibility of it goes through the roof in terms of these experiences. As you said, that might have been limited by the poor connectivity or the lack of connectivity at times. So anyways, just a thought. I do see Mercury and Rain, aka I'm sure Tori, in the chat, and she's very kindly moved us along to something that I wanted to talk about, which is Moxie.
Yes.
I also want to talk about Buoy. Boy.
Yeah, I think buoy.
Buoy, right? I mean, it's a thing that floats in the water, is what I imagine.
Yeah, so I imagine it's surfacing content. That's the whole thing.
Thank you. Good marketing 101 there. Okay. Um, so I do want to talk about Buoy, and I actually started using it, and I wanted to talk about how I'm using it because I think that it's important to surface as creators, and especially like yourself and myself who are constantly experimenting with these tools, how we've found use for them and maybe inspire others to try or experiment. And maybe then they can share how they found use for it, which we might not have thought of as well. But let's start with Moxie. They've been going on, they've been live for a week or over a week now. And just hot take. What do you think about Moxie? 30 seconds or less.
Yeah, so it was personally really difficult for me not having connectivity and having to have a laptop to do all the frames because my wallet that is my soulbound Moxie NFT wallet is not my Coinbase wallet to use on mobile frames on Warpcast. And since everything's frame centric, I like it a lot because I know that there's very little speculation happening outside of Farcast around Moxie because you really are doing everything in frames. So you have to have a Farcaster account. You have to kind of be here for the fan tokens and things like that. But it was also a bit of a challenge, honestly, to do this when I lost a lot of auctions because I didn't really bid correctly and didn't really have time to chat with people about strategy and figure it out. So that was a little frustrating to just not be able to do things in real time. And when I got the notification I was getting outbid, couldn't do anything about it for 18 hours till I was back in my, room with my laptop and all that jazz. So having a little bit of a love-hate relationship from being disconnected, but now that I'm back and connected again, I'm just really excited about it. I do know that there have been a few kind of exploits. And what I've been really amazed by is how rapidly the team is responding to that and making changes in real time. So there was a little bit of a time between like when the auction settled and when the sales went online, and some folks figured out how to get into the contract directly and start buying and selling, and were really messing with the prices. And I think people have seen a few of the auctions that this happened to where the price just skyrocketed at the very last second and cut a lot of people out. And I think the team has like fixed a lot of that. So I think in the next few auctions, we're not going to see that crazy sniper auction stuff right at the last minute that throws everybody out. They're fixing stuff. People who are bringing up, bot accounts that have 10,000 followers and it's all the same bots going back and forth and they're just casting to each other. The team is aware of those accounts. They're trying to like figure out how to, get some of these people out of the system that they know are just abusing it. And I just sincerely appreciate how on top of things they are, and how as soon as people start reporting suspect behavior, they're not ignoring it or saying we can't do anything about that. They're jumping in and saying we're paying attention. We're going to figure it out. Some things we might not be able to solve immediately, but if we do see people abusing it, we are going to take action. And that's really refreshing because I think to have a successful protocol layer, you have to be this involved. And I honestly don't know when they're sleeping, but I appreciate that they are this on top of it and taking the community feedback, really seriously and trying to make sure that things aren't getting abused and it's as fair as possible for the people who legitimately want to be here and are part of the Farcaster ecosystem. And I can't thank them enough for that because I'm sure there's going to be some more bumps, but knowing that when we surface issues that are really truly, people that are just bad actors and we don't want them here at all, they are taking it seriously and going after it. They're not saying, well, that's not a priority right now, or we'll figure it out in 3 or 4 months. It's like, no, we're monitoring this, we're investigating, and we're going to take action if we believe they're bad actors. And that's really refreshing, because most teams don't have the bandwidth to do that. And they're being very, very serious about making sure we're all having a good time, and that this is going to the people who are here and who are active, and not to, a couple of bad actors who are trying to take advantage of, small loopholes. So I really appreciate this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the team can't be faulted, obviously, for lack of trying, because I think they've been very active. I've seen Jason definitely kind of in my feed quite consistently, not just kind of adding clarity, but I feel like they also took to heart some of the commentary or some of the constructive criticism that was given to them early on, which was a lack of educational material or content. And I'll say Jason specifically, because that's the account that I see in my feed most often. He has been sharing a lot more regularly, with a lot more nuance, some of the things that make Moxie work, like how it works, kind of some, maybe not strategy, but really the way that you can go into it to be successful, to find success, answering questions, also kind of revealing some of the things that they're working on and improving on. So I think, in terms of like being a good ambassador and, connecting with your community and resolving issues, like I think that they've been doing pretty good. The other thing that I think that, because again, I want to start with flowers before I go and give my own constructive criticism. I think to your point, that they are doing that, basically that Moxie is facilitating people to start joining Farcaster more intentionally. They've been, I think, very active in Twitter spaces, right? Or X spaces, whatever you want to call them, where they've been introducing Moxie to a broader group of people, many of whom most likely are not on Farcaster already, and then giving them a path to joining Farcaster, to establishing a presence here, to creating good content, and then to get rewarded for that content, right? Which is really what, in my opinion, Moxie represents, and why I started using it. So with that said, I do want to go to my constructive criticism, and I did cast it earlier today because I didn't want to forget it. And I positioned it as a hot take, but, consider it constructive criticism too. And that is, for me right now, when I go to the website, which is kind of the easiest way to kind of explore the protocol at this point, I don't think the frames are necessarily giving you as broad view into the protocol. They give you a very narrow view, which is perfect for frames. When you go to the website, it seems like it's positioned more as a speculation tool, because a lot of it has to do with auctions. A lot of it has to do with buying and selling creator tokens or fan tokens. And, so it's the marketplace of it. Whereas the rewards mechanism, which if you look at their website and their FAQs, they really focus on that as being kind of the reason why Moxie exists. I don't see those numbers so prominently displayed. And I want that to be more prominently displayed. Basically tell me more about the rewards and how they're growing. Don't tell me how the liquidity is getting locked into the protocol. Because at the end of the day, that's just how traditional DeFi protocols talk. And while it's great that there's an angle there to communicate with DeFi communities too, I think that as a creator tool specifically, I'm more interested in learning about how I'm growing my rewards based on the impact of my content and my connection to my community on Farcaster. Does that make sense?
For sure, for sure. And I feel like some of that is a little visible if you know to go to like if you go back to Airstack before Moxie was a thing, right? And you go search on your profile and you see which casts and replies are doing better. And that kind of gives you an idea of like, hey, this channel's hitting, this one's not doing so great. But you have to have, I think, kind of been an experienced user and using that tool before Moxie started. So my hot take is that this is still really hard because I met a bunch of people at Fest who are crypto native, right? They already know like wallets, they have ETH on base, they know how to bridge, they know how to do all the stuff, they swap, they buy NFTs, like they're the ideal people. And several of them had Farcaster accounts, but kind of came left, were popping back and forth, right? So when I tried to explain to them how Moxie worked, I realized like you have to have a really good handle on Farcaster. If you've missed kind of the slow rollout of Moxie, you've got a really big lift to learn about this. And if you don't really understand how FAR scores, formerly known as social capital scores, work, this is also really, really confusing. So I found a bunch of people, they had Farcaster accounts. We went back and I said, okay, so like first we have to like go find an NFT so you can mint this soulbound NFT. And it was actually really hard to find because most core users on the Farcaster network already have theirs. So finding a frame to go mint was a challenge. And we had to I actually had to use Buoy to like look for the mint and find somebody who had just posted it. So it had some left over. So like that was a challenge. I don't think most people could come back into Farcaster and know they have to go like find that frame is like step one. The second thing was trying to explain to them that they needed to install the Moxie cast action. People were like, WTF is a cast action, right? So you have to understand like Farcaster. And if you've dipped out for the past month, you've actually missed out on like a whole bunch of changes that are, again, for those of us that are here every day, is just like a kid in a candy store and Christmas. There's always something new and exciting. But if you've been out of this for like 60 days, you're really missing out on like a lot of core things that you need to understand. And if you don't understand frames, if you don't understand custodial wallet, versus, your connected wallet versus maybe the Coinbase wallet you're using in frames and how that all works, like getting yourself like into the Moxie action is actually a really, really heavy lift. And my thought is like daily active users is going through the roof. Like people are coming back and it lines up pretty nicely with Moxie. So I'm going to give them some credit for this. But I think there's a lot of questions from new people and there might actually need to be some education of like, hey, so you've been out of Farcaster ecosystem for the past 3 months. What did you miss and how do you get up to par on Moxie? And maybe anybody that's listening, there's a lot of Moxie retro grants for providing education. So maybe think like, what if you didn't know anything about cast actions? What if you didn't have the soulbound token? There could be a really good potential for a tutorial there to really aim it at brand new folks. Because I think those of us that have been here every day have kind of just naturally had this Moxie like spoon fed to us over a short period of time. And for me, even the auctions changed between like the first and second or third day about how they worked. And so I was so tired and exhausted. I was just trying to bid. And I definitely messed up like 10 auctions in a row before I realized the frame had actually changed. And that was my fault. Like I didn't read it. I didn't see it because I was terminally offline. And I just came in to do these bids. I totally messed it up. It took me like 2 days to figure out like what went wrong, what happened. And luckily I saw somebody else say, oh my God, the Moxie frame changed and I bid wrong. I'm so new. And I was like, oh shit, that's what I did. Like I messed up the stuff because I didn't realize the frame changed. And again, it's like you miss one cast, right? And you're out of the loop. And for people who have missed 3 months worth of cast, like this is actually really, really hard. So as much as we're saying this is going to onboard more people and this is going to do more stuff, it's actually a huge lift. You have to understand crypto. You have to understand how Farcaster works. You have to be really familiar with, getting cast actions and using frames. And then you've got to layer on like, how does Moxie work and what are FAR scores and why do they matter? And that's been a big thing. I think my second critique is I would personally love to see the FAR scores flattened a bit. They're exponential. And I even made some memes about like the engagement baiting that's taking place, right? Like when people realized one reply from Dan could be worth hundreds of dollars. I know that those top 10, top 20 accounts are getting the shit tagged out of them. And Warpcast is probably unusable for them right now because every time they open it, they must just have thousands of notifications from people trying to get their attention. And I'm sure that meta is going to cool off in a few weeks when people realize like they're going to see through your shitty engagement tactics really quickly. But I also worry that like, what if, these top 500 users get really, really tired of this and don't have a good Farcaster experience anymore because people are just trying to get their Moxie, because you can get 1,000 likes from regular users and end up with a couple hundred Moxie, or you can get, a couple likes from these high people, and the people, if they reply, that's 5x their FAR score. It's really, really tempting to go after that and do the work to just get their attention. And I would not want to be on the receiving end of that. So I feel like maybe if those FAR scores get a little compressed, a lot of that motivation to go after those people will go away, and the kind of natural engagement will come back, because it feels like vibes are a little weird with some of that. And it needs to go away. And I think while there's such a huge monetary reward attached to like getting Dan's reply, that's going to mess things up for a while until either, he just stops responding to all of it, or, and that's a heavy lift to ask people to change their Farcaster usage, or the Moxie team, kind of compresses some of those scores so that it's not, it's not worth spending 3 or 4 hours trying to get one of them to reply. But when I'm looking, and especially I just upgraded Buoy to professional and started looking at their mentions, like it's obnoxious how many times people are tagging those folks in the top 10, and a lot of people tag them and they got labeled as spam, and some of it was totally unintentional, just genuine, trying to surface some interaction. Other people are being completely disingenuous. Like, it's really, I think, showing this double-edged sword of Moxie. Like, engagement's great, but once people realize like the engagement that really matters comes from a handful of accounts, and that's what can really drive the money rewards. That's just going to like change things for a few weeks until that meta kind of dies off. And I think if the Airstack team doesn't make adjustments, that meta might be with us for a few months. And I would worry that some of those accounts are going to just peace out for a while. And these are some core builders, right? They're core early builders on Farcaster. We don't want them to stop using Farcaster. And if I was a founder, I think Linda mentioned this, right? Like, she's trying to help people who are genuinely stuck with Bountycaster, but her FAR score is so high that she's getting inundated with people, trying to make these fake posts about Bountycaster, and she can't tell who is a real user who needs my help and is actually stuck versus who is just trying to get a reply from me because it's worth, $50. And there's sadly a lot of founders of a lot of really great Farcaster native products, on that list who are being targeted. And it must just suck to be them right now, because they don't want to miss real customers, but their replies are worth so much that people are literally baiting them with things that look like real feedback and real stuff. And then it turns out they're not even using their product. They're just trying to get $100 worth of Moxie out of them. So there's definitely some like bad stuff going on, but I don't think like it's by design. I think it's just, once people realized what those FAR scores are and how powerful they are, they're really leaning in to try to get this attention. And it's kind of the core of how Moxie works. So it's going to be a big challenge to solve.
So I think as usual, you made a lot of really good points, and I'm going to try to dissect it a little bit here, because I think that there's a couple of things I want to have us talk about a little bit more at length before the hour's up. One of those is you talked about your use of Buoy in facilitating some of this research. I also casted something else this morning. To be honest, I'm casting these things because I don't want to forget about them. I will forget. Like, there's just so much on my plate that as soon as that thought crosses my mind, if I don't put it down somewhere, it's gone. So I did cast that Buoy is now at the top of my creator stack for several reasons. And I think you might agree with this. My points, but I made 5 points here. One, it's easy to use. I can't believe how easy it was for me to literally go from signing up, literally from landing on their webpage to signing up to start to use it. Like, this is amazing to me how signing in with Farcaster just firstly makes things work so much more easily. In terms of like the onboarding. to your application. So bravo, sign in with Farcaster. If you're a developer, please use that. It just makes using your app that much more easier and fun. But anyways, easy to use. Searches are actually really fun. Like, you literally just have to go to the search bar and start searching for something. And the results are really good too. Like, they're very informative. Like, I'm discovering things about a topic that I would have otherwise not considered or had not had visibility into all of these different perspectives about the same thing. So I think the searches are fun. They're informative. I really love that. It makes research a breeze. And I think you were talking about this, where you were trying to understand, the way that people were engaging with several individuals. Like, the same thing, I want to know how people are engaging different topics. Like, for example, if Farcaster or Warpcast really will be that social media app of the future, then we're going to have conversations that are relevant to a local community or country. And here in the US, we're going to have a lot of politic talk coming up a lot. And it's going to be very interesting for me to hear what people are saying from both sides of the aisle, right? As much as we think that we have more than two parties here, sadly, no. So I'm really going to be interested to kind of understand the sentiment on both sides and then inform myself with those sentiments. Same when I'm hosting a podcast, I want to go in there and I want to learn about a topic, or I want to learn what people are talking about, what's trending, right? Or if there's a specific topic, like in this podcast, we talk about creators. Literally just type in creators there, and I see all of these amazing conversations and what people are saying, which, by the way, I want to surface one of those casts that is relevant to what you just said about these top users of Farcasters who are just being inundated and are getting overwhelmed with, all of these fake comments that are really skewing what is their engagement because people are trying to earn from them, right? So put a pin on that. It has also increased my curiosity, general curiosity for what's happening on Farcaster. I'm able to have a very easy lens into the Farcaster user base using a search bar, where before I might have needed to use Nanar or Dune to extract some, insight into the conversations happening on Farcaster, which those are wonderful tools if you're a developer. If you're not that, developer leaning, then they're unusable for the most part. Now you have something like Buoy, which makes it so easy. So I want to have, at Fista here on on Farcaster, at some point, join us, because I think that it's just going to be a really wonderful conversation. What do you think just generally about Buoy as a research tool? Because you did start talking about it. I'd love to hear your point. And then I'll bring up the cast that I found that resonates with your feelings about Moxie.
Yeah. So again, what I really like about Buoy, and I do have to give the Warpcast team credit. The Warpcast search has gotten so much better over the past 2 or 3 weeks. I'm actually able to surface and find things that I could not before. But Buoy is still like so superior because you can exclude certain keywords and, kind of get things out. So it feels a lot more like Google. Like, I can actually get in there with my pluses and minuses and, only search this domain. So it's really, really powerful. And for me, it's really interesting to find things where maybe somebody's not talking in my channel, or somebody doesn't at me because they don't want to tag me necessarily. But when I then see that, I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually really interesting, And so sometimes just like searching myself is a little it sounds vain, but it's a good way to find out, like, if people are having a conversation about something I'm doing or a tool I'm using, and they're debating like if they should bring me into the conversation or not. And then sometimes I just pop in and they're like, wow, stalker, like, how did you even find this conversation? And I would not have really seen it on Warpcast, but I definitely see it in Buoy. And then the fact that on my phone, I click the cast and it just opens up Warpcast immediately so I can start engaging with it is like fascinating, because two, like I run an anime channel, right? So sometimes I'll see people post about anime, but they don't really pick a channel. And then I can actually say, hey, I saw your post, here's a channel. You can come hang out with us and vibe with other people. And I get a lot of people coming to the channel that way, whereas I wouldn't have normally found that in Warpcast, or it wouldn't have really been on my radar. So there's been a lot of like cool use cases for me of like how to use it as a creator, how to use it to find if people are talking about or sharing my art, because sometimes people will share my art, but they won't at me. But then I know, hey, that's somebody who's like, my fan and did me a solid by promoting it. So I did not have to cast about the same thing, for the 10th time. So then I can go say thank you. And otherwise I wouldn't have seen it, right? Because if they don't at me, I don't get a notification. And then notifications honestly suck. And they made some changes when they turned off power badges. And now my priority notifications are a mess, even though I do like that. Some of the power badge stuff isn't as big of a deal as it was a few weeks ago. I'm now getting notifications from bots that are good bots, like they're bots that I like, that tell me about, my tips or things like that. But I don't follow them on purpose because I didn't want them in my priority notifications. So being able to go through and search for, even just my mentions and then exclude every bot that's mentioning me and everything like that, suddenly I can actually get through my notifications pretty quickly and not miss stuff that Warpcast would have made me miss, because Warpcast will say I have 600 notifications. I know that's a lie. I know most of those are the bots replying because someone tipped me or I tipped them or something like that. I need that information like when I'm tipping, and then I don't need it any other time. Like I appreciate someone tipped me, but I don't need the bot to say, hey, Humpty tipped you 10 degen. He has 500 degen left. Like that's not relevant. That's relevant to you when you're trying to not over tip, but I don't need a notification about that, right? So I would rather just have people who are trying to talk to me so that I can answer them back. So that's where Buoy's been great for me, because I'm almost kind of using it as a cheat sheet for my notifications so I can exclude stuff I don't want. And it makes it where this way I'm not missing genuine people who are trying to genuinely talk to me, who I was missing before with some of these notification changes. Or even in my case, you can only go back a couple days in Warpcast notifications, and then you just missed everything, right? Like God forbid someone tagged you, on day 2 of base camp. I missed all those, right? So with Buoy, I can actually go back and look and see, like, did I miss a conversation that someone's genuinely saying, wow, PG's just ignoring me? And it's like, no, I didn't see it. But, it's hard to have to tell people you've got to use all these outside tools. But I think, even Dan said, like, competing with Warpcast directly is probably hard, but take a hard look at, like, what do you not like about it and build around it. And I think Buoy took that to heart and said, look, search sucks. It's hard for people who are, doing a product, right? Like if you're doing Dracula or Supercast or check-in and people don't tag you, you don't know it's happening, right? Or, you have an automatic thing where every time somebody posts from Dracula, it says posted from Dracula. You don't want those notifications. You already know those people are using your product. So you need to search for when somebody did not mention you with an @ symbol. You still want to be part of that conversation. You still want to be tracking that. And Buoy kind of gives you this like magic search engine to do all this. And I don't know if that was their intention when they built it, but I'm definitely super enjoying like the slice and dicing, and I see a lot more people than I see in my feed, and it's kind of helping me expand my network in a really weird way that I'm sure again was not intentional, but I'm a huge fan of it. And I finally had to just break down and buy it so that I could add even more, because before I would kind of cheat. I would like do one Buoy, use that for a couple days, then go in and change it, and now I'm like, no, I need 7 or 8 of them, so I just have to get a pro subscription.
Sweet. Well, I hope to definitely get to that point. So I actually casted this yesterday, and I basically said that I missed when you talked about Buoy. Like you see in the video clip, which by the way, Fista clipped and shared. That clip wasn't even made by us. So good job, Fista, for like surfacing that on your own. And then you could see that I'm paying attention. I'm like, yeah, wonderful. But I totally missed the fact, the impact of what you were saying, right? So now, as that has been, by the way, I received several tags, not just Fista. There was at least 6 or 7 tags that came through crediting you, as they should, for that comment that you made about Buoy. Since then, I've logged in, I started to use it, and I see the benefit of it. I'm definitely going to try to become a power user because, like I said, that's going up to the top of my creator stack, because that really is where the creative process begins, is the research. What are people talking about? What are some relevant topics or talking points to what we want to be talking about on the podcast? On the newsletter, how do we want to reference some things that people have said or casted on Farcaster to support my commentary in my newsletter? Like these, I think it's just a wonderful tool for creators, and I would 100% recommend using it. And the likelihood is that by next week, I'm going to be a pro user too, because I'm going to get to the point where it's like, I can't be switching off my single buoy, on some regular cadence. That said, I want to bring up the cast. And the cast is by Samantha, or the crazy candle person, as we all know them. And they basically said that today was the first day that Moxie stopped them from casting. It's awesome that they were making money from just casting and helping their small business. Woohoo for small businesses. But it feels like they're on a hedonic treadmill and can't get off. They have jobs, and they go on to talk about like jobs and making money. But the point is, they said they would love the option to disable earnings on specific casts or turn them off to show the truer or more genuine authenticity or engagement of those casts, which they believe that's the mission of Moxie. And from that, there's a lot of comments included by Jason, right? There's also a comment by blue.eve, who Sam also referenced in the replies to Jason, in terms of how can they benefit maybe the general community, or how can they disable earning on some of these casts. I can imagine, just based on Sam's usual engagement and followers on Warpcast or Farcaster, that they're getting inundated with replies that are irrelevant or just fake.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's excellent, right? Because as we start to talk Moxie, like we had a couple of questions come up in Power Hour last night. And it was like, well, what happens if somebody rage quits Farcaster, right? Like you have their fan tokens, what happens? Because in theory, it should kind of go like up only because of the buy and burn mechanism. Like the more Moxie you're earning, some's going to your channel, some's going to the network token, some's going to your fan. If you're casting pretty consistently every day, again, so caveat, Moxie is not doing the burn every day. And they're doing this strategically because they don't want people to manipulate the price like right before and right after the burn. So I think once the burn is more consistent, people are going to see the fan tokens start to appreciate more regularly. And that's kind of the way it should be. And they'll feel like, okay, I see why I'm in this, and it's worth it to like buy tokens and things like that. So I think some of that is just they're doing it slowly and trying to make sure it's authentic. And again, people aren't hacking the system, but it does start to put this new layer of pressure on people, right? And it is concerning, right? That if someone like and I'm going to pick on like Wake and Ted because their fan token auctions did really, really well. If they decide like this isn't for me, or Farcaster vibes aren't what I want them to be, and they rage quit, like what actually happens? So I'm lucky that I get to moderate a discussion tomorrow with Jason and ask some of these like real hard hitting questions. Like what if people rage quit? What happens if, channels get really crazy and people want to start, co-hosting channels again? Like how do you share rewards? How do you start to make this more community based? Because he even set up a channel today. So this is late breaking news. He's going to set up a channel called Yes Chef. That's kind of a riff off the Bear about food and cooking and restaurant recommendations. But in order to post, you're going to have to hold 500 of the tokens, right? So this could be one where the tokens go crazy, because that's a lot of tokens, especially if the price jumps up. If they're 1 Moxie each, no big deal. But if they're 500 Moxie each, that's huge just to post in a channel, right? Are we going to do that? Is that going to be the new meta? Some of us are using hyper subs. Some of us are using NFTs. This is the next version of the protocol. Like you're going to be able to use these fan tokens to do cool things for your fans, reward your channels. And he's kind of taking, I think, the first stab at like what happens when a channel is fan token gated and the fans actually start to reap these rewards. And I'm starting to see people say, well, what if, I want all my Moxie to go to the channel? Is there going to be an option for that? Like, what if I don't start a fan token at all? Can I actually say, I want everything to go to my channel? Can we start to give tokens to the people who are posting in the channel? Like, this is where the rewards mechanism and sharing it could be really, really powerful. But also, the double-edged sword is like someone like Sam, who I think is very authentic, very genuine, who is the epitome of a creator on Farcaster, who is not a dev, right? She's literally making candles, but she's using tools like Hypersub to like make it, where you can actually subscribe to her and get candles. Like, it's a super interesting use case. And I would hate if someone like that, who is pushing the limits on all sides, stops engaging or starts retreating into themselves or doesn't really want to participate in this as much because they feel like people aren't talking to them authentically. Like, that would be a dark side of this whole experiment, because there's not that many people who are crushing it who aren't devs here or don't own a product or a Farcaster startup related type thing. So it would hurt me to see someone like that leave, right? The same way, like, it would be devastating, I think, if Ted left, because she's another example of someone who is like a creator and a builder in every sense of the word builder, but is not a dev, does not own a, Warpcast adjacent startup, is still, by all objectionable measures, literally crushing it, but has also kind of gone through those phases where when Degen first started, she was very vocal that like that wasn't the meta she wanted, and she didn't want people just engaging with her to try to get Degen. And now Moxie is like, you don't have to tip, right? Like, you don't have to do anything. The Moxie just naturally happens. But if it's happening in an authentic way, it's still happening. So I even kind of made that point as a joke with the Degen team, that if someone is tipping and we think they're part of a farming ring and things like that, if I use my magic degen powers, I am actually giving them Moxie. So if 5 of us all go after their cast and start to take away their degen, we might actually give them more in Moxie than they would have ever gotten in degen. And that really defeats the purpose, because you don't want to reward bad behavior, and your engagement is actually a reward now. So it's like, I think this is the stuff that we're going to start to suss out over the next few weeks. It's like, how do we make sure we're being authentic, we're rewarding the right people, and how do we not get caught in, these inauthentic conversations or people who are just trying to bait us to get our Moxie? And how do we make sure that people who have been here for a really long time, and because of their consistent engagement with the network, have really high FAR scores, that they're not so overwhelmed and decide to leave because, they can't even open Warpcast without seeing 1,000 notifications, and then they miss out on the good ones. Those people stop engaging with them. Like, it's kind of a bad cycle, right? And that's a hard thing to solve, and I don't think we can fix it instantly, but I think it's good to talk about and, not just make it like Moxie solving all the problems, we're all getting rich. It's like, no, it's creating a lot of interesting use cases, and we all have to kind of help out with this community policing to say, like, that's not good, like, don't do that. I think we're going to see a lot more posts and like, don't do this, of, this is clear engagement, rage baiting, whatever, and we want to stop that, discourage it. And it's going to be a lot of work on some of the people at the top of that list to be like, hey, don't get caught in this. Because once you're caught, and once you start responding to these trolls, like, all the trolls are going to come after you, because you're very visible. You're on the leaderboard, and while you're on that leaderboard, you're a target in a good way and a bad way. So just be aware of it and know that people are coming for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've reached the hour, and I feel like I love chatting with you because this hour just flies. So this series is really amazing. I look forward to hanging out with you every week. Sometimes I wish there was more than once a week. We'll see what we can do about that. And there's a lot more that I think we left on the table. Like there were a lot of other things that were surfaced through my Buoy search of creators that I want to talk about today, but we ran out of time. So my challenge for anybody who's listening to this live is go to Buoy, sign up, search creators, find something that moves you, like whether it's an announcement or a new product that you never had considered, as a creator, if you're not a creator, and share it with us in the Crypto Sapiens channel on Farcaster. And we'll continue the conversation there. Until then, or next time we talk, we might bring some of those topics up to the stage as well. Also, want to thank everybody who's joined us on Unlonely Live. It's been really rad to see everybody there, but also follow the conversations and see the excitement. I think this is just turning out to be not just a wonderful series, but a wonderful experiment when it comes to on-chain media. Any last words, Pichi, before we sign off?
I was just going to tell everybody, have fun and be genuine. I think that's going to win in the end. And even if things are shaky for the next week, know that, all the teams are working on this, right? The Warpcast team is shipping every week. The Moxie team is shipping every day. I'm watching third-party tools like Moxie Scout and all these new frames popping up every day. Builders are getting excited, and that's what we need, because when we get excited and when creators get excited and we start publishing content, this is how the flywheel kicks off. And this is where, again, I think everyone should get paid for their content, and I think this is the best chance we have at that meta. So deal with what's bad. Don't be afraid to surface when you think things are not going well and not as intended, because the team is paying attention. And, just keep leaning in, keep being yourselves, and it's going to work out. Don't worry about the rewards over the next couple weeks. That stuff's going to shake out dramatically, but lean in. And if you don't have a channel yet, consider what channel are you going to create, because it's really important to understand how all this works. I think it's going to be really important as channels get more integrated in the feed. The Warpcast team is doing experiments where 50% of your home feed is now channel content. So if you don't have a channel, I challenge you to create a channel this week. It can be about anything. The more niche and crazy it is, probably the better it's actually going to work. So pick one, make one, use all these tools. And the more you're using them every day, the better your Farcaster experience will be. And you will be so far ahead of the game. So just lean in, jump in, and ask any questions in Crypto Sapiens, because Humpty and I stalk that channel. I have notifications on, and happy to help and riff with people. And if you don't have an idea for a channel, put your thoughts out there and we'll help you figure something out. So just jump in and do it. We're here for it.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Pichi. We'll see you all again next week. Hopefully same day, same time. But we'll update you. Follow the Crypto Sapiens channel and the Crypto Sapiens calendar on events.xyz, which maybe we'll talk about that next week too, because that's part of my creator stack.
Yes.
Until then, thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye, all.